Dear students, this is phylum Arthropoda part 2. So this is phylum Arthropoda part 2. We have talked about their specific features. Now we are going to elaborate on these. Versatile exoskeleton, efficient locomotion, tracheal system, highly developed sensory organs, complex behavior and metamorphosis. So let's elaborate. So first characteristic is exoskeleton. Now, this is very specific and important feature of the arthropoda that they do have an exoskeleton. See, exo means the external skeleton, the framework. So this is something very special to the arthropods that they do have an external skeleton, which is basically not these are not enveloped by what we call living tissue, that is the skin, but a specific material which may consist of complex structures, and this is some specific feature which provide them some extra protection. This is secreted by the living layer which is present below that, the epidermis. So this is basically a material which is secreted by the living layer, but that covers that living layer and give it some extra protection. So this is basically a waterproof barrier. What happened that you have heard of cockroaches which are living in the drainage pipes, and so they are having waterproof exoskeleton. The external layer, as you can see in this diagram of a crab skin, that they are having the skin down there, the living cells, as you can see if you follow my cursor. Then you can see an extra layer which is covering this basic layer of epidermis. So it means that they do have some extra protection from water. So one thing that this exoskeleton, this thick layer, is waterproof. So this is a waterproof barrier. That's why they can survive in rain, in drainage pipes, and in many other places. This consists of a specific material, chitin, and sometimes calcium, and also lipoproteins. So this is a complex structure. Um, what are the modifications of this particular exoskeleton? That there can be sites for muscle attachment. Of course, insects have to move, arthropods have to move. For movement, there are muscle attachments on this exoskeleton. Sites are there on which muscles could attach and can help them in these organisms in moving. Then there may be energy stores for flying, because they have to fly, and for flight they need some extra energy. So energy stores could be present. Then there should be spaces for sensory receptors. You can see the bristle or the seta, which are actually rising from epidermis, but passing through this whole exoskeleton and then coming out of the body, which can help them in sensing the environment. So space for sensory receptors should be there. Then gas exchange, of course, we already talked about it, that they do have a specific kind of system called tracheal system, um, which allow the direct exchange of gases with the air. The trachea are the tubes in which air passes, and they can exchange gases directly with the air. I mean, the body cells can do that. So the spaces should be there for gas exchange. Then bristles, which are part of it, are sensory receptors. So they are and also they should be protected inside their environment. For that, they do have specific colors which matches to the environment. Here you can see a grasshopper, very well matched to the environment, and other organisms also do the same. So exoskeleton, some part of it may be soft and permeable, sometimes very hard and completely impermeable. And this is uh, between segments of the body or the appendages, it should be thin and flexible. Now, what happened that here you can see a diagram of a picture of an insect. These are the joints, and of course, they have to move their legs on these joints. That means that at these places, this should be flexible and thin so that free movement should be allowed on these joints. So, these joints are the places where this soft or where rather than hard, more softer part of exoskeleton is present, and also it's more flexible so that their joints can easily move, and they can freely move the joints and on these sites. Now another important feature, which is basically we can say some sort of disadvantage. Before that we were talking about advantages or benefits that they are having due to exoskeleton, but there is sort of a disadvantage that must be shed to allow growth. um, Definitely, when they have to grow, that is, they have to increase their size. At that time, this hard exoskeleton could not be retained and they have to replace it. That process is called ecdysis. So, this is some kind of limitation of having an exoskeleton. Another limitation is this, that this is relatively heavy. As you can see in the previous diagram, that they are this layer is quite a thick layer, so definitely it gives them some more weight, so it's relatively heavier. This basically limit the size of the these organisms. So mostly if you see arthropods, many of them are in comparison to other animals are smaller in size. uh, so this is another, we can say, some sort of disadvantage, but mostly this exoskeleton is highly advantageous for them. So second important feature is their very efficient locomotion. That efficient locomotion is due to their jointed appendages. Here you can see the jointed legs of an insect. Here's the joint, here's the joint, here's the joint. There are many places where joints are present. You see their mouth parts also joints are present. Now what happened that these joints actually allow them, uh, we can say, movement on almost all kinds of places. Due to these joints, the jointed appendages, they can move on different types of places, like even soil, like rocks, like trees. They can move on almost every place, even on the surface of water. So this gives them a huge advantage, evolutionary advantage over other animals, and that's why they are much more successful in exploring different types of habitats. So there's an huge advantage, we can say, which is efficient locomotion. So this is the second important advantage that these organisms do have. Now the third advantage, that is the tracheal system. The tracheal system is basically a system of air pipes, which have their openings towards the exterior, coming out of their exoskeleton, or we can say just openings in the exoskeleton, which opens to the exterior, and then inside they are connected through a system of pipes. So if you see here in this diagram, you can see that there are, in blue color, there are pipes which are opening at multiple places, here, 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 and more places. These are called spiracles, and these are connected towards inside a complex system of tubes which is covering almost all parts of the body on both sides, on both lateral sides. Now this um wonderful system of tubes basically is filled with air. Now what happened, that air can enter from these openings, spiracles, and move here and there inside the body, and direct exchange of gases between the cells and the air is possible due to this system. This is a huge evolutionary advantage because due to this, they can extract much amount of oxygen, which is required, of course, for making energy and other processes in the body. Due to that, they are very efficient um, exchange. They can, it is possible for them to have a very efficient system of gaseous exchange in the body. So most of the insects do have, most of the organisms, these organisms do have efficient tracheal system of air tubes. There are few which also breathe by gills, but the disadvantage of this system is just that it limits the size. Because what happened that this tracheal system cannot actually manage complex body structure. So that's why um, this actually limits the size of these organisms. So this is second thing which limit the size of these organisms. And otherwise this is very advantageous, because air is very light medium through which gas exchange is possible very easily, but of course it limits their size. So that's a disadvantage.